Hello everyone, and welcome to another Florida Native Plant Society Lunch and Learn. I am pleased to be here again. I know it's been a while since we've had a Lunch and Learn, so we're starting off easy with a video, with two videos, recorded and edited by Sammy Tedder. Hi, Dixie's here. She's feeling much better, thank you. She got some stitches out recently. And he was at the Tallahassee Field Days for the 42nd annual conference, and he filmed all of the sessions that he attended and edited them for us and sent it to me on a thumb drive. So thank you, Sammy. And this panel we're going to be watching is 43 minutes, and it's about Atlanta Botanical Gardens' work on restoring a really cool state park up there in the Panhandle. And then the second part will be an 11-minute video of the Spring Canyon property, which is just a gorgeous property that Helen Roth has pretty much restored and done prescribed fire on, and so we're really lucky to have these two videos. Now, before we get started, I would like to encourage everyone to apply for one of the landscape awards. We have several different options, several different categories you can apply for: residential single family, residential multifamily and non-residential, restoration, and butterfly and wildflower garden. And while there are fees, you can request a fee waiver. So please consider applying for an award. We're very excited. The deadline is August 31st, and winners will be announced October 1st, just in time for Florida Native Plant Month. So, without further ado, let's get to our first video.
My name is Nia Wellendorf. I'm with the Magnolia chapter, and just on behalf of our planning committee, we're really happy you guys are all here, joining us with this hybrid conference virtual field days situation. Extravaganza, that's right. And I know we had 2 field trips today, and I think they went great. I hope you guys enjoyed those if you participated. I'm going to say I want to thank the conference, our field days planning committee. So all the field trip leaders, so Helen and Annie, and Shane's not here, but Shane and Wilson, Ann and David and Ryan tomorrow. We really appreciate you guys being willing to lead field trips and share your places and what you know with everybody. Especially for tonight's event, but also for tomorrow, I really want to thank Lynn in the back, who really made sure all this was going to come together and all the logistics here and tomorrow's lunch, which is going to be awesome. And Jeannie and Sandy. I want to thank James and Vicky's out at the entry table, but really appreciate their help. And also the fact that this was a multi-chapter effort, so Magnolia and Sarracenia, and we even brought in Sweet Bay, who you'd think we would talk to each other more, but we don't, so it's been a joy to get to know Jody, and thank you, Jody, for inviting our speaker. After our presentations and roundtable in here, we will have a few minutes that we'll ask folks who are going on field trips tomorrow to get up with their leaders if they have any questions about where they're meeting and how that's all going to go. We just want to make sure everybody knows what they need to know. And there is still some room on the Apalachicola National Forest field trip for tomorrow if you are not signed up, but you changed your mind and you want to go. And with that, Jody will introduce our speaker, and thank you.
Right. Well, I am happy to introduce, here we are, okay. I am happy to introduce Jeff Talbert, who's our speaker today. I met Jeff, I guess about 2-3 years ago, and he has had some awesome jobs over the years, and right now he works over at Deer Lake State Park, and he works for Georgia Tech Research Institute, and he is the coordinator of the restoration of species diversity and hydrologic function of wetlands within the Coastal Dune Lake Watershed Project. And if you've never been to our area, we have some amazing coastal dune lakes that are just fantastic habitats and just An amazing thing, and to be able to work in one of those areas is fantastic. And Jeff gets to do that. He coordinates project-related activities and a lot of other associated projects. He coordinates the clearing and keeping partners updated and participating in prescribed burning, which all of us know is very, very important for many of our habitats around here. He's a native of Central Florida. Started out in political science and then saw the error of his ways. And he's then became a park ranger and resource management specialist at Grayton Beach State Park and Topsail Hill Preserve. And he's been actually practicing resource management since 2008. So that puts you at about 15 years.
Didn't I? Yeah.
So he lives in Argyle, Florida with his dog Clementine.
I love that name.
Yeah, I do too. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jeff, and thank Jeff very much for coming here and speaking with us. I think you'll find it very interesting.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. There is a small correction. I don't work for Georgia Tech. I'm not that smart. I work for the Atlanta Botanical Garden, which is in Atlanta. And we have a conservation and research department, and we do conservation and research projects all throughout the Southeast, some even internationally. But the one that I am most interested in is at Deer Lake State Park over in Walton County, Florida. And just a brief background, we got $8 million in 2015 from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation to restore wetland acreage at Deer Lake State Park. It is a partnership between Atlanta Botanical and the Conservation and Research Department and the Florida State Parks. Atlanta Botanical doesn't own any land. Florida State Parks have some wonderful land, so we wanted to partner up and work together. They do the operational side. They do the actual cutting and restoration, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then on the ABG side, we do the coordination and data and science collection to make sure that what we're doing is having a positive impact. Our contract was to clear 220 acres by June of 2021, which we completed. And then we have to have, well, actually this is a little bit dated. We got a 2-year extension to finish the project, but we will have the 310 acres done by June of this year. So we'll have 310 acres of wetlands cut in on the way to restoration by June of this year. So to date, we have actually cleared 285 acres, which is about 95% of the way to the goal. And we have, over the life of the project, since 2015, have cleared at a pace of 3/4 of an acre a week. We started off slow, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but then we picked up the pace and found ways to increase our rate of clearing. We thought we could do it at about an acre a week, and we do sometimes, but as we get near the end here, we're finding a lot of places are hard to get into because they start getting really wet, and any sort of rain makes it really difficult. So we did get the 2-year extension, so I do have a job for another 2 years. After that, we are working on trying to get a grant to move over to Grayton Beach State Park, which is about 8 miles down the road. Grayton Beach has about 585 acres or so of wetlands to restore there, as opposed to about 310 at Deer Lake. So if we get that, that'll maybe give me another 11 years, and I might get to retire. I'm not really sure yet. And then we plan on trying to move over to Topsail after that. And we've also have recently talked with the forest rangers at Point Washington State Forest to try to look and maybe doing a partnership with them, because there's a ton of acres there, and it abuts all of these state parks. So if we could get all of that area and get those wetlands in restoration, that would be very huge. It would take a lot of money though. So in addition to our grant, we have a grant going on to make sure that what we're doing is correct and having a positive impact. And this is a $1 million grant through EPA. And this is coordinated by my counterpart, Ashlyn Smith, who also works for Atlanta Botanical. And this is studying hydrology, how much water is in the slope or in the wetlands. And they're taking water samples from beneath the ground to find out how much nutrients are in the ground. We also had this idea that we have all this tai that has grown up in these wetlands, and it's transpiring all this water out of this wetland, and so less water is available, than should be. So when we take all that out, is more water in fact available? So they are looking at that to see if that is in fact the case. Vegetation surveys, soil surveys, and seeing what kind of herpetofauna we have in these areas. And this is all to better inform us on our restoration. So as we move to Grayton, how can we improve our process going forward and make it better, more efficient, and then have the best impact that we possibly can on the wetlands themselves. We don't really have any volunteer opportunities on our project, but Ashlyn does sometimes. So if you contact her, there are occasionally volunteer opportunities that do come up for her projects, and they need all the help they can get sometimes. So as was talked about, coastal dune lakes. This is one of the reasons sort of why we are doing this. We have these very rare and imperiled coastal dune lakes on our coast in Walton County. There's 15 of them along the coast. They all occur within a mile of the coastline, and they are all fed by rain runoff from the uplands into the wetlands, into the creeks, and then eventually into the lakes. They are rare throughout the world, but amongst those in the world, ours are unique in that they periodically open up to the Gulf of Mexico. So rainwater comes through all those wetlands, fills up that lake basin, and then it'll break through the berm out on the beach, and then empty part of its contents out into the Gulf, and then there will be an exchange of fresh and salt water in there. So the wetlands that we are trying to restore are directly connected to the Gulf of Mexico. And that has implications for all sorts of things, including shorebirds and everything else. So this is a map of Deer Lake in 1941. The yellow outline, that's the boundary line there. And we have the modern day management zones on there. But you can see how open everything was. This was St. Joe land. Deer Lake was acquired by the state in 1996. And it was, prior to that, it had been owned by St. Joe, I think, for roughly 60 or 70 years. And mostly silviculture activities took place out there. And so you can see how open and wide open everything is in these nice creeks. This is Camp Creek Lake here, and this is Deer Lake over here. And this is what it looked like about when we started the project. Much less open, although the state reintroduced fire in 1996 when they acquired the property, and uplands are much more receptive to fire and recover better over a period of time. These wetlands were not managed in any way, shape, or form by St. Joe. It was just wasteland. There was nothing they did really wanted out of there, except occasionally putting some of their plantation pines, along the edge of them. So they weren't managed with fire. So they became overgrown with tai, which is really the main culprit that we've looked at, which over all that time grew into tree size instead of shrub size, started shading out all of these wetland areas. And over time, that makes it difficult when you're trying to restore these areas and reintroduce fire, because tai is very volatile at one point in the spring, and the ground is very wet. So fire will carry only a little bit into there. And if you're burning on a day when fire carries through an entire tai swamp, you should not be burning that day. I would not put not want my number on that burn. And we have the added bonus of having all of this development all surrounding us. There's actually houses all in this entire square here now. And so we get limited on the amount of time that we can burn during the year and with which winds. We're very lucky that everything's mostly to our south, so we can burn with the south winds, so that allows us to grow in the burning season. But it's still, trying to restore the wetlands is not great with just fire. So this is one of these wetland areas. What we did is we identified that this was open herbaceous. You can see there's hardly any trees in there. In 1941 was the earliest set of aerials that we had to use. This is all upland over here, pines, longleaf pine, wiregrass, nice creek out there goes to Deer Lake. So we have this signature here that we knew was open, wet prairie. And we verified that by mapping this area here. The crosshatched area was an area where we had found remnants of pitcher plants and wiregrass and hat pins and all the stuff you find in a wetland. That was all in this small little area right here. Nothing was doing very well. but we knew that wiregrass didn't move into there because of the shading and lack of fire. It was on the way out from there. And so that gave us an idea of what it is that we were working with. This is the most recent aerial here. You can see that we've cleared almost the entire area of the tai trees. There's still a little area, deep area here where there's a creek. And most of what's left out here are pine trees. And we've returned fire and removed the tai off-site there. It's nice and open again. So this gives you an idea of what it looks like inside a tai thicket once it takes over. Over the years, these trees, with lack of fire, they grow big, they grow large, they dump all of their leaves and sticks and everything else in the ground and create this mulch in the ground, this organic layer. And it starts pushing out all of the stuff that was there, all the herbaceous species that were there. And so this is what we are looking for to return that to. And then we have a lot of areas where this should be in place of the previous picture. This should be an abundance of pitcher plants and wetland species out there. This was actually taken 1 month after a burn in one of our restoration areas. So what do we do besides stand around and eat ice cream? The first thing we did was we had to know what we were working with. We looked at the old aerials and we GPS mapped all of the wetlands at Deer Lake State Park. And that's how I made most of those maps you see here. All the areas in red and green are all wetland areas that we mapped. And we broke them down into smaller sort of chunks, like about 5-acre pieces or so that our crew could, we had a way to measure what we were doing. And most of this map is cleared by now. So the first thing we do is like I said, we started out slow. We started out cutting everything by hand, which was very slow and very difficult, especially in a Florida summer. You're not going to be able to hire somebody to do that in Florida summer. So we slowly moved from doing it by hand to a more mechanized way of clearing these areas. We wanted to do it with as little impact on the wetlands as possible. And so what we do is we have a track loader with a mulching head or a mower. And we mow the small to medium-sized tai up along the edge of these wetlands. This was very nice because I have this nice area in the middle here. But the stuff that can handle, we'll mow that down and allow us to get access in there. Then what we do is we come in and we have an excavator, we have 2 excavators. And we chose this because it gave us reach with the arm. And we didn't have to bring a piece of equipment down as far into the wetland. We could stop it at a certain point and reach down to where we needed to go. And so what they do is they use the boom and the bucket and thumb to break off the tai trees. We are not allowed to pull them up by the roots, which we would like to do. However, permitting for that would be ridiculous. And so inside of State Park, trying to get a dredge and fill permit, it would have been nearly impossible. So we have to break them off as low to the ground as we possibly can. And then what we do, we were chipping them. As many of you may know, the paper mill at Panama City is closed. That's where we were sending our chips. So now we've got this huge pile of chips and know we're nothing to do with it. So what we now do is we impact one small area in an upland and pile it and then burn it when we either prescribe burn or do a separate pile burn. But it's key that we get that biomass, as much of that biomass, out of the wetland as possible because these are very nutrient poor ecosystems. And so we don't want to just lay all that stuff down in there and then have it break down and break down all the nutrients into the wetland where these plants and stuff, don't really need it. We try to get as much out as we can. The other thing that we are not doing, we are not using any herbicide on this project whatsoever. Everything is cut, and so what we have to do is, if you ever try to get rid of a hardwood tree, nearly impossible. But it's also, we are not trying to get rid of the tai because it is a native. We're trying to just kind of bring the balance back to where it was in the landscape. It is out of balance in a lot of the landscape. So we actually come back with a mower and remow the regrowth of the tai. And sometimes these areas, you can see here, the ground, it's not very much of the ground. There's not a lot of fine fuels that carry fire. So we come back with a mulching mower, cut the tai, allow that leaf and sticks and the small stuff to lay on the ground and cure, and then we basically use that as our fine fuel to carry the fire through there. And that serves the purposes, one, it gets rid of all of that stuff. And then it allows that fire to more effectively penetrate the zone that we're trying to work in. So this is a look sideways into a tai thicket here. There's a creek down here, and this goes off to the east over there. And this is from the same spot here. creek still down there. And you see the crews moving down. And you see the remnants of the tie stumps and stuff down there. And then this is what it looks like after it starts to regrow. It starts regrowing in these clumps with tons of stems coming back up. And we see about 1 meter of growth in a year out of that tie. So we come back periodically, and that's actually one of the things that we got the extension for, is we have areas that have been cleared in 2015 that are doing really well, have had several cycles of fire, have been recut, or starting to look really great. But we're going to have areas that have been cut in June of 2023 that will not have had that length of time to recover. And so we got the 2-year extension in order to make sure that we can continue to manage these areas and they don't return back to how they were before we turn it over. Because our success is that we are able to turn end the project, and the state park doesn't have to do anything other than their regular burn rotation. You know, we burn these zones every 2 years, maybe every 3 years. So that regular interval of fire return on those areas will keep these areas in the wet prairies and seepage slopes that we're looking for. And the return of fire is key, and we do return fire into these areas. We have had returned fire into some of these wetlands that may not have had fire inside of them in more than 80 years or so, in some cases. And the results are almost immediate. There's a nice seed bank down up under the duff and in the duff layer, and we see recovery of a lot of the species. We have augmented populations by taking seeds and then replanting stuff by growing it in the garden. But in a lot of cases, it's not even really necessary. All that stuff starts to come back on its own. So another thing that we do on the ABG side is vegetative transects. We want to know what it is that we are doing and how it's having an effect. And so we have 11 sites throughout the state, throughout the park, in these small 5-acre parcels. It's a 50-meter vegetative transect that goes down into the wetland, starts just outside, and then these are the parameters that the data points that we take. And so at the end of this project, we will analyze all that data and to see if we're having a positive impact on the diversity of species and the richness of species. Those are the 2 main ones that we want to see. They were random, so sometimes they're not, you don't have the really nice stuff in there, and sometimes you do. But I mean, just anecdotally, just looking at it, you're seeing a lot of stuff coming back in these areas. But this is going to give us the data that I can confidently say, yeah, it's happening. So, what is it that we're trying to do out there? And ABG is very focused on plants. And so these are some of the species that we are looking to have an impact on in these wetlands that you'll find in these wet prairies and seepage slopes over at Deer Lake and Grayton along the Walton County coast. The white top pitcher plant, the Sarracenia leucophylla, which is our only listed species of pitcher plant out there. Very pretty. Grows, starting to put up pitchers now. One of our last pitcher plants to flower in the spring. Very distinctive because they're very tall, very red. Parrot pitcher plant, the Sarracenia psittacenas. You always got to slow down before you say that one. One of my favorites, low on the ground in the way that it catches its insects. I came across the population yesterday. We had just burned a zone back at the end of March, and these fins here were the biggest I've seen. They were so huge, and the head was so tiny compared to the size of the fin. It was pretty crazy. I don't know if it's a response to the fire or just having to regrow or what it was, but they were really neat to see. They're pretty low to the ground. You find them in a little more in the wetter areas. They're also blood red petals in the flower. They're very pretty. Not very big. Very low to the ground. Our Gulf Coast pitcher plant, the Sarracenia rosea, which is unique to our coast, is a version of the purple pitcher plant, but it's unique to the Gulf Coast. The downward facing hairs, always like this picture because you can see the deadly route that something has to take to try to get out. Doesn't look very inviting. Another one that occurs in the wet areas along the creeks, fills up with rainwater, and it has a very, very pretty flower with these nice rose-colored petals on them. One of my favorite pitcher plant flowers in the spring. Then, of course, the trumpet pitcher plants, which you saw earlier. This is probably our most numerous species. Well, I don't know, Psittacina might be, it's just hard to see. Our most visible species, I guess. And we do have all the different colors on the pictures there. The only ones that I don't see is the ones that don't have any red in them. I don't see any of the ones that are just all yellow. You see a lot of variations in the red coloring on those. And they're the first ones to flower in the spring. And I wish they'd wait a little bit because our average last date of frost is the 3rd week of March down there. And they are already well into their blooming by that point. And as it tends to happen, like this year, we had a very strong cold front at the end of March. And almost all the flowers were frost killed. And so that it happens.
March 22nd.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all remember that.
Yeah, I was below freezing at my house, so which it hasn't happened yet. But yeah, so that tends to happen. So it'll knock them back. The pitchers don't. It doesn't really affect the flower or the leaf growth, but the flowering will get interrupted. And the fact that they occur in like these low kind of depressions, it doesn't even have to get like close to freezing. It just kind of has to hover around there with the dew points and everything getting right, and that cold air will settle in that low spot, and everything in there will get frost killed, and everything up on the hill, fine, no problem. So if they're higher up, no problem. So, spoonleaf sundew are listed species of Drosera, and this is a species that I notice will go away very easily if conditions aren't great, but will come back very easily if conditions are great. And I have seen this now spread to just a few small areas where we saw it throughout the park, located near creeks and wet areas, and it has readily moved down into these open areas down creeks as we've cleared them out. And so it's spreading nicely, and it's very happy in our park. I like that one too. Like nice little pretty pink flowers. Threadleaf sundew, the Drosera tracei we see out there. We do not have any of the filiformis, although I look every year. Have not seen it, but the tracei we have a lot of, and it's very beautiful in the late afternoon sun, and in burned areas where it comes up very quickly, especially right now, that area I was talking about with the pitcher plants that we had just recently burned. There's a whole section of this growing up. The grasses haven't even reached that height yet, so it's just all threadleaf sundews all down through there. It's very, very pretty. And they have nice fiddleheads too. And they are just now finishing up their flowering. I noticed the other day I saw a lot of seed heads on them. We have several species of pinguicula, the planifolia, which is it's like little tongues. List of species, we have this in 2 areas in the park, and it is a species that we have actually collected seed from and grown them in our greenhouses up in Atlanta, in our microprop lab, and then brought them back and then and augmented the populations with them in certain areas. And they seem to have taken, so they transplanted pretty well. We have also done that with these, the Pinguicula lutea. And we did that a little bit, one, to save a population that was on the side of 98, and to augment some additional DNA in our populations in the park, because they were only in a small handful of areas. The planifolia likes it a little bit wetter. You'll see it underwater a lot. This one likes it just a little bit drier. You'll see it up on the edges of like stumps and stuff in these wetlands. I think this is about one of the first things to flower in the park every year. It's like very early in February when these start blooming. Bladderworts, very cool, underrated species. We have, I think, like 8 or 9 species of bladderworts in the park. This is the one you see the most, though, all from out there. Large flower milkweed, which is just now starting to flower. If you ever wanted to know how a milkweed flower works, this is a good way to see it because it's huge. You can see all of the parts inside. This might be actual size. Very pretty in the late spring. And we actually, on the topic of milkweeds, added three species of milkweeds to the park plant list just by being out there every day. We just found pedicellata in a recently burned area a couple days ago. So that's not even a wetland species. We just happened to see it. So Chapman's crownbeard, which is one of our listed species as well. We've had this in one area of the park, and it is also spreading. We have this very large wet prairie in the northeast corner of the park that we share with Point Washington, and we actually tried to dual burn it with them. So when they burn their parcel to the north, we do that parcel to the south. So we start at the south end and just work our way all the way up to 98 with them. That way, it keeps us, either one of us, from having to trying to get fire on, keep them off of each other's property. And the property line is this just huge wet prairie, and so it's almost impossible because it's all wiregrass and it's dense, and fire just easily travels through there. So we actually burn it in conjunction with them. Well, our efforts in restoration in the park, plus that burning with them in that wet prairie, has expanded the range of this species in that wet prairie and then down through that watershed. So it's very nice to see. I don't know if you ever felt the leaves; they feel like a cat's tongue. Pine lilies, we see these in almost every single wetland, wet prairie, and cedar slope that we have in the park in the late summer. Very nice addition to the late summer. Blue flag iris, we're starting to see that more and more as well. Barber's buttons, the Marshallia, we see that quite a bit in almost every single one of our wet prairies. Then we have a whole host of orchids, the Cleistes. If you ever get a chance, get down on your knees and give this a whiff. It has this great vanilla smell. I smell everyone. Sometimes they don't, but all the smell's gone or something. But it's absolutely wonderful and very pretty. Grass pinks, the Calopogon. We have 3 species of those. I do offer a bounty to my staff that if they find the multiflorus, then we're all going out to party.
Haven't found it yet.
Have not found it yet. But multiflorus is, you find it almost immediately after burn, within 2 weeks after burning. It loves that open black after the fire. It comes right up after that. And so, every time we burn, I spend my time looking, and still haven't found it yet. It's in the area, but the yellow fridgeless orchid, so this one is the only one of the ones I'm going to show you that does not occur at Deer Lake. It's up the road at Topsail, and we are looking to expand the range of it. It is found in a wet prairie overall, just off 98. I found it several years ago, and it's another one that if we find it there on its own, it's going to be a big day. But it should occur there. It should occur in those wet prairies. But it's not extant in the park. And then this species here is probably our most charismatic orchid. This species is the one that kicked off this entire project and has me standing here before you today. When the state acquired the property back in '96, they did a land management review of the park. John Benty, who some of you may know, and Eric Johnson came out to the park to see, what did the state just buy here? You know, John, he used to big with the hand gestures. What did we just buy here? And they found a white-fringed orchid growing along Camp Creek, Zone 11, where somebody had mowed just a single line through this seepage slope. And so there was some pitcher plants in there, but there was one of these. And that's when they started putting together, they realized that they needed that there was something special out here, and they needed to start doing something to get it back in order. That long time passed, realizing that you can't burn yourself back into restoration. It's very, very difficult to do, very hard on everything. And so, that's when they came up with the idea to, mechanically physically remove the hardwoods off site to return fire in these areas and restore these wetlands. And we have collected seed and augmented populations down and throughout the park. But on their own, there's well over 1,000 of these down that seepage slope, down the creek now. late summer bloomer, very beautiful. It's quite a sight to see. And yeah, so thanks to the White Fringed Orchid for existing. Very beautiful. I put a game camera up several years ago. I was really interested to see what was coming to pollinate. And it is mostly sphinx moths. When you can see the proboscis here.
Yeah, wow.
It's kind of hard to see because the camera's not great, but it was infrared. But they have a proboscis long enough to reach down to get the nectar in the spur.
Wow.
Other stuff would visit it. I got a hummingbird during the day and some big butterflies, but every night these would come right after sunset when these were shining out the most in the landscape because they're white. And then they would go away for a little while, and then in the middle of the night, around midnight, another round would come through, and they'd do it again. And then right before sunset, or right before sunrise, and then they were gone for the day. So it was pretty neat to see. So yeah, that's my presentation. If you have any questions about what ABG does in the conservation department, you can visit our website here, or follow us on Instagram. We have an Instagram page just for the conservation department, which the garden doesn't like. But we share all the stuff that we do, all of our projects, some of this project and all the other projects that we do throughout the Southeast and elsewhere. So if you guys have any questions, I would be glad to take them.
Fantastic, amazing.
Thank you.
Presentation, absolutely. You of course talked about fire and the frequency of fire. I'm not sure that I heard what months you were burning in or those lands are burning in. What are the primary burn months for this project?
For
and
us-
for the management of those properties?
So for us, it's growing season, and that can be late February to, I mean, for me, I wouldn't recommend going past like the first or second week of June, past that.
That's where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to just, See
So
what-
on our project is that's the case. Like we just finished up a burn 2 Thursdays ago.
okay.
And you can definitely see a difference, and I'll tell you how you can see a difference. If you go to Topsail Preserve State Park is hemmed in by 98 to the north. So north of the park, the park extends from 98 down to the Gulf. You have a hospital, Publix, houses, Sandestin, you have all this stuff in there. They are not able to burn during the growing season because we get the sea breeze off the Gulf. So the wind comes up out of the south. So the only time that they can burn is when they have a north wind, and they have to have that north wind for a couple days until that smoke goes down. So they have to burn much earlier, maybe March.
We gotta fix that.
I wish
That's
we,
policy level
Yeah.
stuff that maybe we'll talk about on the round table.
yeah.
But anyway,
But you can see a difference in the landscapes.
yes.
I mean, at Deer Lake, you get these wiregrass gets seed,
Yeah.
and you got these nice open savanna vistas.
Yeah.
Over there, ilex, salt
Right.
palmetto, it's much different, and it's very clear, that's the reason why. Very clear.
And so the project that you're associated with burns primarily in May, June, or exterior to that, or?
We go a little, well, we try to beat the drought. We do our best to beat the drought, because we had, the last burn we had a couple Thursdays ago, we were right kind of on the tail edge of it. And we had it flared back up on that Saturday because we did not get rain like we thought. We had a dry front. And so my entire weekend was out there chasing fire in areas throughout the zone to keep the smoke down. So we do try to beat the drought, but we have burned, we burned zone 15, I think like on June 8th one year, So we try to fit it into that growing season window.
And policy probably, hinders you being able to burn exactly when you want to burn all the time.
Well, I don't work for the state.
Yeah.
So I'm available to burn whenever.
Uh-huh.
It's not really a policy, but they have been very loath to burn on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays.
Sounds like policy to me.
And that was even when I worked for the state. It was much the same. I'm trying to get them. I talk it up all the time and trying to get them to change that. But
I'm sure you do. It's the
It's-
higher-ups that we've got to talk
it is,
to.
and the state parks are understaffed, underfunded.
I
And
hear
so-
this all the time.
Well, and,
And I'm not grilling you.
no,
Grilling
well, it's not
policy.
my, I don't work there anymore, so.
Right, right.
I just see it from the outside, but, you know, you have a lot of turnover, so you're getting a lot of new people, which has been a challenge for us on our burns, is that, you know, we're constantly having new people in. Luckily for us, we've had a crew that's kind of been together on this project, and we were all certified to be able to burn. And so we kind of had that core, but, you know, you're constantly bringing in other people, you know, and it can be a challenge. I mean, we've made it work, we've tried to mitigate it as best we can, but.
Sounds like a plan, thank you.
Yeah. Well, you know, I like late May, early June burns, which is the waxing season.
Me too, Blake.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going with
You
this.
mentioned early on that you weren't able to burn in under conditions where the fire would go through that tie. And of course, that's ecologically when you need to be burning, but administratively, maybe when you can't burn. But my real other point is, after you mow this stuff, I noticed that the tie was coming back. How many decades do you think you will have to continue to mow it before it runs out of energy?
I don't know. I don't know. What we do see is, and like I said, we're not trying to kill it all off. We just need to kill some of it off, because it's supposed to be a shrub in the landscape, like ilex or, you know. all that stuff.
Absolutely. It is native, I understand, but in most cases, what you've got there is tie encroachment because fire was excluded for so long, and it probably historically did not occupy a lot of that area.
No.
And fire applied at the wrong season
Right. And
allows it to continue to exist.
you know, if it's a large tie, and you said you don't use any herbicides, but I use herbicides a lot in my restoration effort. A lot of people don't like it, but you know, cut stumps is pretty safe, and it won't come back.
Right.
If you try to keep it mowed or burned, you may be doing it for the next 40 years, and it may still. And if you miss a time, you know, if state funding or something is such that they can't keep the mowing up, then it may, you know, get away from it again.
Well, that's why we see it die off. We do see some of it die off. Fire, when we bring fire back into some of these areas where it's been cut, it will kill some of it. But we weren't sure of what the effects would be of the herbicide, and every other project that's doing something like this is using herbicide. So we wanted to see what it would be like to not use it. We weren't sure if there was root transfer, you know, all kind of stuff. So we just decided we would go this route and see if and collect the data and see if we could do it. We did notice that when we started using the excavator to break the trees, we saw a little bit higher mortality in the trees themselves, especially because you know we're not allowed to pull them up, you know, by the roots, which would be ideally, which is what we would like to do. But if we do, we'll disturb the roots, you know, as they're shaking that tree and trying to break it off. It'll disturb that root ball, and in cases like that as well, we will see some higher mortality in those.
Let's get one more question.
It's actually a two-parter because I missed the first 10 minutes and I'm sorry, I got lost.
That's okay, I was late too.
What you're talking about, so what's the name of the park?
Deer Lake State Park down in Walton County, Florida.
Okay, and the second thing that I know you all, and all of you in this room know the answer to this, that I just am the only one that doesn't, but doesn't nature at all do any of the burning, or are you forced to do it every single 2 years?
Wouldn't that be amazing? If we allowed Mother Nature to act
I
again
mean,
the way that
in
she
the old
wants to.
days, what happened?
And that's why we're trying to burn ecologically. I'm sorry. Passionate about this. We'll talk about it in a minute.
I wish we could. Like you're saying, I wish we could. We're surrounded by very high dollar homes, and a couple years ago we had. If you're not familiar with Point Washington State Forest, there's out parcels that are north of 98, small ones, 10, 20, 15 acres or whatever. They can't be managed with fire, and all they do is mow around the edges of them and stuff like that. Well, a couple years ago, they had it was man-caused, but they had a fire right at the beginning of May, and it burned up 30 houses down there. So smoke now, for everybody in South Walton, makes everybody very nervous. And so there's a layer of, there's people out there doing it, which will give people a little bit of comfort, which I'm okay with. But, you know, yeah, I wish we could. If we weren't doing it, you know, the lands will become receptive after a couple of years of growing grass and all that stuff in there, pine fuels. Lightning would hit and it would burn around, and it would just go basically wherever. It would just kind of skunk around, and you know, it would be very mosaic-y. Some would burn, some wouldn't burn. It back very nicely. Sometimes the duff will burn up. It would be very, you know, hit or miss.
The landscape is more broken up than before,
Yeah.
you know, we developed it. So I do want to let folks know, let's take
This property is an interesting one in that there was a failed attempt at a subdivision of 1 acre lots back in 1926 when it was first, parcel was defined in 1995. Just wonderful to have this community that we've built where it's gone from 100 acres of my property to over 700 acres. But I'm trying to leave the trees as for the woodpeckers. Yeah, standing dead trees are very valuable. So it's a work in progress. You're seeing it at a point in time, and I cannot walk around this property without going, oh God, I need to do that, and that. Yeah, there's messiness to it, but then there's success stories also.
Wildlife Service has a program called Partners for Wildlife that we are really, which is funding most of this, I should say. So I just want to plug them, Partners for Wildlife. I mean, if you have some acreage and you want to restore it for wildlife habitat or imperiled species habitat, it's a great program.
Get out of here.
10 to 12 hours in each stick.
Almost back.
Had on the neighboring property would hit the still water and dump its sand. So then we got sandbars. Width of this was wet. It was wide and narrow. Now it's getting deeper and it's running under, and that side is dipping just a little bit because the water's undercutting it. So I'm going to have to figure out how to deal with that part.
When was this buried?
Okay, so this was just burned last week.
Okay.
A week from Friday.
Maybe.
Yeah. Help me out with Annie.
Bobwhite,
And Bachman
eastern
Sparrow.
meadowlark, northern bobwhite, eastern meadowlark, Bachman
Bachman
sparrow.
Sparrow. So Bachman Sparrow and Bob White, we've been hearing a lot. On the 30th of March.
Like whiskey, Helen, from your front.
Oh, okay, that's really.
Oh, hell, you can lean on me.
Okay, we have everybody?
We only need one car.
Yeah, great.
Pyramid magnolia. Get out one.
Beautiful flowers.
Are they like, one of them has like pale green flowers, one of the magnolias does, doesn't it?
They're white, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God. It's Gardenia kiss, if I'm pronouncing it right. But you can see that day flower structure here.
It's got water in the septic system.
I'm not used to this on the back of my cat.
North in that same hole.
So, but I do agree that unfortunately this is such a huge county. They're very
Okie dokie. This is a point that I call my Tale of Two Cities. And if you want to read Two Cities, Tale of Two Trees, based on Tale of Two Cities.
Yeah.
So if you want to look at this card when we get back, you can read it in more detail. But I have a friend, Nicole Zampiri, some of you may know her, came out with Lily one time, and she cored a bunch of my older looking longleaf pines. And she did 10 of them. And by coincidence, I have two standing right next to each other. One is the oldest and one is the youngest. One is the largest and one is the smallest. They don't match the way you would expect. Now the dead giveaway is the one on the right has a flat top. It's almost 200 years old.
Yeah.
When it was around 100 years old, about the last time this area was, or when it was logged around 1940, the tree on the left was in the grass stage. So the one on the right is the mama tree, and probably shared resources through the roots with the one on the left, and it grew up really large. The one on the right is small, more than likely because of the large longleaf pines that surrounded it when this place was first logged in 1925. So it was outcompeted.
How old was the one on the left again?
80.
80. Yeah.
So
that's just
280. There you go.
Balanus oblongifolius, commonly known as gopher apple, and it's in the Chrysobalanaceae family, which is the same family as cocoa plum, which is really neat, which is real common for all these.
That they wanted to sell this parcel because I think essentially all the tree line you see over there, all the way down there is ravine.
Look at that beautiful Toxicodendron, this Anacardiaceae. Yeah, look at
And I went back and I looked, is that Conradina glabra? How have I not seen it all these years? So I let Annie know that I thought I saw it. And she looked at the picture I sent to her and was like, oh my God.
What is that again?
Conradina glabra.
Oh.
And then you burned it up?
It is only documented in the wild for Liberty County.
Yes.
I suspect that this is native. I mean, that it's here naturally. because we're only
Yeah.
within
Very
2
close.
miles.
How did it get
of that,
get here?
that intersection with Victoria. I
Yeah.
think it's been here all along, but it was suppressed because this was closed canopy.
Right.
We had opened up the side over here, several burns before we opened up this side. And even after we opened it up, there were a lot of vines. So last summer, when I was thinking about burning this unit, when I did burn the one over there, I was going through clearing the vines off the trees to remove ladder fuel. And I know I did it around these and this snag. There were a lot of vines here. I did not notice this plant at that time, and I'm right there. I don't think it was that large at that point in time. It's collected the sample to send to Atlanta Botanical Garden so that they could do a genetic diversity examination of that. Because they did a survey analysis of the genetic diversity on the ones over on Toria. And I do have a copy of the results article on that with me.
So it was a biological desert in 2020, slicked off the sand pine, came in, installed the seed and the pine trees, and this is 2 years hence.
Isn't Sammy just amazing? Wow. Yeah. And I mean, Helen and her property. So I hope that transition wasn't too shocking for everybody. You realized that the last video was ending and we were transitioning into the field trip. I hope everyone has been enjoying my little transitions. They're a bit better. I've been working on the studio mode here in my software. So these regional field days, I think, went over really well. I went to the Naples one. You can read my write-up in the Sable Minor from the last Sable Minor. I enjoyed it immensely, and it seems like the chapter really enjoyed putting it on. So I think we're going to try this again in the spring. So keep an eye out for announcements of the next sort of conference-style event. So as everyone may or may not know, we are not having a 2024 conference because we want to plan a large, successful in-person conference. And we have a full cadre of staff, I guess you could define that, the 3 of us, and we are ready to put on a big, traditional Florida Native Plant Society conference. However, usually those are planned 2 years in advance. So we are planning 2 years in advance for the 2025 conference, but we are going to have at least one field day and probably a science-focused event and perhaps another one for everyone to get their in-person time and for us to continue pursuing our mission to preserve, conserve, and restore the native plants and native plant communities of Florida. And before we wrap up today, I don't see any questions here in the chat. Obviously, I'm not the person to answer questions about the Tallahassee Field Days because I wasn't there, even though I did, participate somewhat in planning them. But I do want to pitch again and show you guys the Landscape Awards. Encourage you to please, if you're considering applying, do so. Now, if you don't meet the 2-year grow-in criteria, or you are just not ready this year, if you go to fnps.org/landscaping and then click on the Landscape Awards, because the Landscape Awards are just a part of what we do in landscaping, there is a sign-up link for our interest list. And so that's an interest list that will remind you when applications open next year. We'll say, hey, have you taken any photos yet? Do you have your plant list? Did you plant anything? So please go ahead and sign up for that interest list. If you have any interest, if you manage a native landscape institutional, just a butterfly garden at your house, or if your chapter has a butterfly garden or a demonstration garden, that's also a candidate for this, for these awards. And this year we have a different kind of award. So we used to go with the wood style, like just like a wood plaque, just like we give all the Palmetto Award winners. But the landscaping committee merged with the education committee this past year, and they have they're redoing the awards process, like not only just changing the deadlines, but also the Gardens of Excellence. So there's two tiers of awards: Garden of Excellence and Garden of Merit. Garden of Excellence gets a custom stained glass piece for the award, and then the Garden of Merit gets a custom garden flag that you can place, notifying your neighbors or people that walk by that this is an award-winning FNPS garden. And the Garden of Excellence also gets that flag too, they can put out. So we're past 1. I hope everyone enjoyed this Lunch and Learn. And thank you so much to Sammy for recording those and sending them to me. Recording, editing, and sending them to me. So I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Of course, if you need to get in touch with me, my email is communications@fnps.org. I have been working my email backlog, so I should be responsive, hopefully now into the future. So, and thank you so much for your membership in the Florida Native Plant Society. If you're not currently a member, please, we rely heavily on our memberships for general operations funding, and general operations funding is me and Linda and Lily, and to support our other programs. So please join fnps.org/join. All right, bye everyone.